My name is Renske. I am a computational biologist and I work on how plants evolve and how their growth mechanisms evolve. When plants evolved from unicellular algae, they had to learn how to coordinate bigger tissues by using communication between cells and by regulating their expression of proteins so that they would make the right tissues in the right place. And so I'm interested in how these regulation mechanisms evolve over very long timescales, evolutionary timescales, to then generate the kind of complexity that we see in plants today. For instance, there are cells in the plant that are stem cells, so they keep dividing throughout the plant's life to generate the leaves, the branches, and all the other organs of the plant. And they need to be very carefully maintained. They have a special place in the plant, the niche, and there are all kinds of plant hormones that make sure that these cells are maintained there. And these genes that are involved in this probably arose when multicellularity arose. So in order to understand how this works, we really need to study these long timescales. When I was studying biology as an undergrad, I got really interested first in making models, computational models of development, so of these mechanisms of growth and differentiation of cells. And during my PhD in this, I then got sort of drawn to the evolutionary aspect. And computational models are actually really useful for this because we can't wait around for plants or animals to evolve something. That takes way too long. But in a computer, you can actually simulate thousands of generations. So computer modeling is really suitable for this kind of problem. And so when I realized this, I really wanted to go on with this because I think you can answer questions that you can't answer through experiments. I studied in Utrecht in the Netherlands. I studied biology, and then I started specializing towards development, so embryonic development. Then I did a master's there as well in computational biology, where I made all kinds of models. I made models of white blood cells in lymph nodes. I made a model of fruit development, very diverse. And then I did my PhD on how segments in animals arise, like the vertebrates in your spine, or the little segments of insects, how they evolve. So that is when I got into the evolutionary aspect, because this is a very early forming pattern that is really regular. So it fascinated biologists for years. So that was a really cool question to get into the evolutionary side. Then I did a postdoc, and for that I moved to Helsinki, where I worked with a computational model of flat tissues that then have to mechanically deform into all kinds of shapes. And then I put that model into an evolutionary context to see how the genes that regulate these mechanisms and this tissue deformation, how these evolve over long timescales. From there, I actually moved back to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, to study to go back to the origin of multicellular development, to study how multicellular life evolves. So what drives these unicellular organisms that you have going around being all independent, how they go towards coming together, becoming more dependent on each other. Why would that happen? And what happens to these cells once they become more dependent on each other? I figured that all these things that I had been studying in animals, they also happen in plants. So what drives me now is to see whether there are commonalities between plants and animals in their evolutionary processes, because they evolved to become multicellular separately, but there still seem to be some shared patterns over these long evolutionary timescales. So I would like to unravel what are the differences and what are the similarities between plants and animals, because they have very different challenges, yet we see these common patterns, and I want to understand this. I love working with students. I have 2 master's students now, and they are super enthusiastic, and I love discussing science with them, reading papers. So the interaction with other people really drives me.